Hi guys, my name is Amanda Propst and I'm a teacher in Central Florida area, the Orlando area, Lake Brantley High School. I teach all seniors all day. I teach an AP class. I've been running the AP economics and actually micro and macro economics program for the last 10 years. I'm very specialized and it makes me a little bit unique. It makes me unique in that I'm in a department that is full of historians, yet I'm an economist. So I am the math person. Please bear with me. This is my first time using Zoom. We used WebEx all through the pandemic and still are utilizing it today. So it's the first time I've hosted on Zoom. I'm gonna get started and share my screen, and we're gonna talk about what effective teaching looks like. All right, first of all, effective teaching looks like practicing. I did that like 5 times, so let's hope that this video works. All right, we are in the 21st century and what a time to be alive. As we're going through this and we're looking, I want to keep in mind that not all this is working in the pandemic, and a lot of what we're reading was far before the pandemic. And, a lot of things fit and a lot of things don't. But hopefully when we're done with this degree, we're done with the pandemic. But I do want to give a shout out to current administrators, if that's your path, because they are working hard and they have no training and everything is changing every single day. All right, past that, effective teaching in the 21st century. Let's see what we have. First off, let's start with objectives. And yes, I'm going to read to you for a minute, and I apologize for that because it's not really effective teaching, but I want to go through these, right? And I want to make sure that you understand what we're trying to get out of this PowerPoint. I just slowed myself down. I realized I have 20 minutes to talk, and I'm talking at the speed of light. All right, so our objectives: be able to identify multiple aspects of effective teaching. There's not one way that you can see effective teaching. There's so many different ways. And as future administrators, we have to be able to recognize that. We have to be able to walk into a classroom, and it doesn't matter the subject area. It doesn't matter if we understand it. It doesn't matter if we taught it. We have to be able to recognize, are they doing their job? Are they doing their job effectively? Okay. I also want to take the following information and I'm going to categorize it. We should be able to categorize various teaching styles and relate to effective teaching strategies. Right? Can we put those two things together? Can we take our research? Can we take our reading? And can we create a toolkit? Let's create a toolkit and put it all together with factual evidence, with research-based evidence. Okay. And then let's align these new strategies that we're providing today and we're looking at, and let's put them in a toolkit, as I said, for categorize, and align them with future professional development. How do we use this and how do we move forward? And how is this useful for our teachers? All right. I wish that you could ask questions along the way. That's one of our important strategies. Unfortunately, it's just me talking at you, which is not a very good strategy, by the way. All right, number one, even though this was not in our readings for this week, it has been in our readings for the class though, and it is something that I want to talk about. Building relationships with your students. It is so important for them to know you and for you to know them. The idea of you go to school and that's the teacher and you give them respect does not exist in our world anymore. Again, we're in the 21st century. The 1950s are well past us, and for reasons I'm not going to get into on this one, I'm happy I'm not living in the 1950s, but building relationships with students, we have to earn their respect. We have to earn their trust. We have to do what we're going to do. And we shouldn't be making threats, right? Are there consequences to actions? Absolutely. But are they threats? No. So let's talk about building relationships. How can we build relationships? If we remember before, in one of our earlier assignments, we had a place in the Hoy and Hoy text about building teacher relationships and the importance of it. And yes, I'm going to read again to you, and I'm only going to read quotes to you, but evidence is mounting for a strong association between the quality of teacher-child relationships and school performance. Can you imagine what that means for a child? Without the relationship, without the caring, without the empathy, without that step from a teacher, do they ever actually learn? Do they ever engage? I'm not sure on that. Right? And that's something that we need to see. So as an administrator, when we come into the classroom, how do we see a teacher that's built relationships? How do we see caring? How do we see empathy? All right. So how do we build and recognize positive relationships in a classroom? The first one is laugh. And yes, it talks about dad jokes on the slide, but I told one today. I asked my kids, and I teach economics, what a wreath made out of $100 would look like, or what it would be called. That's what I said. A wreath out of $100, what would it look like? And the answer is Aretha Franklin. The kids laughed. It's cheesy. It's whatever. Some of them looked at me like I was crazy, but at the same time, when I'm telling silly jokes and, innocent jokes, they're telling me jokes and we're laughing. And, I think that's a great thing. Laughter brings people together. The second thing is you have to believe in your kids. You need to know their names. You need to remind them how great they are. You need to remind them. And I know not everybody is great. I know. But they are. I always say kids can change. Kids are developing. Their brains aren't fully developed. They're kids, even high school seniors. They're kids. I mean, talk to them about animated movies, give them stickers, see what happens. They have time to change. Adults, sometimes they're hard. I don't know how well I do with adult learning. Maybe someday. I just don't have as much patience. But these kids need to be told they're good enough and they can do it. Even my AP kids. I have kids that are so overwhelmed and so stressed, and they feel like, these dreams of getting into their number one school is not going to happen because they're not good enough. And that is something that I have to watch in the spring when colleges start sending out acceptance. Like, these kids need to be reminded they are good enough and they have tried. And honestly, thinking about spring and how some of these kids feel, even at the AP level, and even when they are getting good grades and succeeding in top of the class, how much self-esteem they can be lacking. And if you don't get to know your students, you're not going to know that. And even if you try to be genuine with that, if you try to tell them that they're going to succeed, that they're going to get the places they want to be, if you don't build relationships, it's not going to mean the same. Okay. So how do we build relationships? Right? Again, laughter, dad jokes, silly things. I'm going to show you a couple pictures on the next slide of how I greet my students when they come in. But the most important thing is show interest. Show interest in their lives. Do they work? What are they into? Are they in clubs? Are they in sports? What's going on? What's the favorite movie? What's the favorite book? Usually during the first week, I give 5 minutes at the end of class, and it's my listening time. You learn so much when you just listen to kids talk on their own. And in 15 years of teaching, there's only been 2 girls that I did not connect with immediately. They didn't talk about something in that first week in the 5 minutes that I could latch onto and start building that relationship. Because of that, I ended up with a kitten. She is 5 years old now, and her name is Eleanor of Aquitaine, for you historians out there. Her mom and her had rescued cats, and they had one left, and it was going to the Humane Society, and I offered to take it. And I will tell you, that child still checks with me and that cat, and it's definitely a relationship builder. Taking a pet from somebody and adopting a pet, I don't know if that's for everybody. But if you give that 5 minutes at the end of class and during the first week and let the kids talk about what's going on in their lives and just listen, not listen with something to say, not listen with something to teach them, just listen about them and let them talk about themselves. You can start building those relationships very easily. All right. So before I was talking about kids being kids and even high school seniors still being kids. I'm going to show you something on the next slide. It's the way I greet my kids. I do this since the pandemic started because, no, I'll explain it. Let me get to the next slide. A picture's worth 1,000 words. Right? These are my students coming into class, and yes, that is hopscotch on the floor in painter's tape to give something kids to do. And we laugh and they smile and we greet each other. Good morning. Good morning. I always make it a point to say goodbye when my students are leaving as well, because it's important. We're communicating, we're building relationships. Before the pandemic, I used to do High Five Fridays. We'd have music in the hallway, and everybody that walked through my hallway, whether my student or not, got a high five. I even have a shirt. This is High Five Friday on it. Since the pandemic, I haven't been able to wear the shirt or give high fives. So now we are using painter's tape and putting activities on the floor. You would be amazed at how many kids do this on a daily basis. Love it. Come through my hallway that aren't even in my class just to do it. They use the back stairs instead of the front ones so they can come through and do hopscotch. And this year I'm blessed to have a hallway of teachers. Actually, a hallway of teachers. Last year I had 2 in my hallway. This year we have a full hallway. I have a hallway of teachers that want to keep this going. So we're going to be expanding our activity hallway all the way down the hallway. But it's a simple thing to do in between classes, and it builds those relationships and it creates that laughter. All right. So that was not in our reading, but I had to add that because effective teaching is about building relationships. So based on our reading, the second thing that we're going to talk about is the communication of a teacher. Are you clearly communicating directions, instructions, material? Are you making connections? Those things are all important to understanding and learning. If you don't know what a teacher's saying, how can you learn from them? I don't know. All right, so clarity is a huge problem. Not problem. It's a huge problem if you don't have it. So we want to make sure that when are teaching students, we are in front of them and we are clearly giving instructions or guiding. And there are times I will say my subject is hard and the kids get lost. And there are times that I'll say, and I'll stop and I'll say, who can say this in a different manner? Who understands what they're asking and who can give it to them in a different manner? That's so important. Okay? It's also important to use objectives. In the beginning of this PowerPoint, we created objectives, talk about clarity. And I used 3 different words. Okay? I used identify, I used categorize, and I used align. Those are action words. What am I learning and what do I want to do with it? Okay. Now, 2 of them were knowledge-based, identify and categorize. And then the other one was skill-based. Can I take what I've learned and align it? That's like students aligning it to standards, but we're going to align these to professional development. Okay. And then we need to allow time for students to create their own learning goals. Where do they want to be and where are they going with this material? I will be honest, as an AP teacher in a semester class, time is of the essence. I have none. And I'm not very good at student learning goals. And this is something that I need to work on personally. If you guys have any ideas, please get a hold of me through eCampus. Send me ideas about how to incorporate better learning goals into my lessons. Number 3 and 4, I combined, right? And we are using hearts. We're using hearts, ideas, and different indicators of of effective learning. So, but engaging students in learning and questions probes and facilitating discussion, I feel like all go into one. Okay? You can't engage students if you're not doing all of these things. So I want to talk about some of the things that I do in my classroom that I see, and see what you think about it. And there's a couple things I forgot to include, and I know I did, but we'll talk about that in a second. Real quick, read these quotes because they're great, and I don't want to read to you again. That's not effective teaching. All right, I'm going to move forward. I think those are great. Right? If you have any questions about them, again, get a hold of me. All right, how to recognize effective communication. Oh, did I forget to change that slide? I did. Please don't dock points. I did a lot of work for 5 points. Let's go back to the last one. So this is how do we see engaging and questions probes. Okay, so how do we recognize effective engagement? Okay, the first thing is connecting, right? You have to bring in prior knowledge. Now, I will tell you that I used to use KWL charts when we first started, and KWL charts for economics are pretty hysterical. What do my high school seniors know about macro or microeconomics? Nothing. They don't even know the definition. As a matter of fact, standard level, honors level, they don't know the definition. If you ask them a word to describe economics, they say money, which I'm sure a lot of you are going, yeah, that's what I would use. However, think of your word, what would you use? However, money is finance. And does money come into play in economics? Absolutely. But economics is about scarcity and unlimited wants. And we have to start at the bottom with my subject. So I try my best to bring in connections where I can. What are you buying? What are you looking at? What do you want? Right? And as we move through and we learn these new terms, we can definitely bring in prior knowledge of things that we did. One of the first things that I do is talk about demand. Supply and demand are a huge part of economics. So with supply and demand, I always ask, who wants a new car? And then we talk about their new car because we got to get that out. But then we decide if they're creating demand. And can you create demand if you only want something? Okay? And we move on from there because they all figure out they can't afford it. So how are they creating demand? Do car companies create a car for you because you want it? No, you have to be willing to purchase it. Now, when we get into note taking, there's a lot in the Dean book about note taking and summarizing and effective note taking. And I will tell you, most high school seniors in AP classes are great note takers, but there's some that aren't. And as an effective teacher, you have to look at notes and you have to know who is effective and who is ineffective. And for those ineffective students, you're going to have to guide them, right? And honestly, it doesn't take long. It takes a couple of lessons and they start figuring it out, right? If you don't do that, you're not setting them up for success in their next stage, okay? You also have to give time for students to summarize their notes. They don't go home and read them. They don't. Even high school seniors, they don't go home and read them. You have to give them time to summarize. And I'm going to talk about an activity on the next slide in just a second. The other thing about probing questions and engaging is stand up. Stand up. Stand up. I can't stand up and still be on camera, but there's an activity in micro class that I use, and it's super silly, and the kids laugh. We call it micro aerobics. But when you're looking at elastic and inelastic, it's a item's sensitivity to price changes. You have something called a total revenue test. And in a total revenue test, you look at what happens to the price and what happens to total revenue. Now, if the price of something increases, but the total revenue decreases, you're making an airplane, right? It's not an I, it's an airplane. I know that doesn't start with an E, but it's not an I. So this is elastic. But if that price increases And then the total revenue also increases. We've made ourselves into an eye and it's inelastic. Okay. It's little things like that. Get up, move around. I have some wonderful activities like the handshake market. If anybody teaches economics, please let me know. There's all kinds of different versions of this. I do a handshake market once we get through supply and demand, and I love it. I think it's great for learning. All right, here's a timeline of an activity with notes. I use Nearpods. I started using those during the pandemic because it keeps some separation. And then I go into guided notes, which I have on the next page for you. After that, they take their guided notes and they create Venn diagrams. And then I let them practice a little bit. Okay? And then we'll do a stand-up activity, the handshake market after that. But it takes multiple days of doing this in class. This pace is more of my honors pace and not my AP pace. I will say that AP kids are more willing to do homework overnight, but I do not overwhelm them. AP kids are the biggest cheaters in the school. Don't overwhelm them. They will copy and they won't learn anything. All right, here are some resources. Here's a Nearpod on demand that I can show you. If you've never used Nearpod, they're very interactive and you can incorporate a lot of effective teaching strategies into the Nearpod. And here's my guided notes. So the guided notes is what I would use after they've taken their own notes. Okay? It's a way to condense them and make sure they've got all the information that they need. Sometimes they miss it. Sometimes they write things incorrectly. Okay. So in the Nearpod, I have different multiple choice questions and things that I do as practice with my kids. Today, a student got one wrong and couldn't figure out why. When we examined his notes, he wrote the same thing twice instead of two things different. Okay. But we caught it in the same day in a 48-minute period. You have to provide feedback to your kids. I know teachers that collect work and do not give it back until after the kids take the test. I'm sorry. I'm not saying names and I'm not saying whether they're with me now. What I'm saying is, what good is giving a child work if you're not going to provide feedback, especially before the test? Please take a look at this quote. I'm gonna let you read it on your own. Learning is all about growth. All right. So I just stated that it must be timely, but you also have to find balance. Too much homework and kids are overwhelmed. And as I said before, AP students will cheat. Okay? They will copy things in a heartbeat. They think their life is ending if they're not going to get something in. So you have to be, I'm so flexible with them because of that. But they do their work. They do it themselves or in partner groups or study groups, because I encourage that. And we talk about it all before we ever take a test. It's important. And I don't know if you can see this, but I keep this in my room, in the back of my room. This is my old poop station. It stays in the back of my room with multiple desks around it. And if a student comes in and they're not understanding something, they go directly there. They don't go to their assigned seat. They go there. And that means the first 5 minutes of class is, oh crap, it's the oh poop section, right? We got to figure something out. And they can get small time. And in that 5 minutes, the other kids can do a warm up. They can review something. They can work on what I call their homework guide, which I didn't get a chance to talk about today. There's things that I can say, do this, and I can spend 5 minutes here. What good is giving somebody a warm up if they don't know how to do it? They're just going to keep doing it wrong. So, oh poop section, I recommend one. Also, I know it's hard. I know it's hard and we're time constrained and it's hard to get everything graded and put notes and individual and feedback. Use digital resources. There are so many resources available to us. I think I read somewhere in the book, and I'm sorry that I'm not going to cite it. At the time that book was written, there was over 10,000 educational apps. That is overwhelming. I know. And I know sometimes I stay away from things because it's overwhelming. But you can find things that grade for you and provide instant feedback to kids. If you are struggling with time and time management and balance and family and work-life balance. Use some digital resources. They're going to work for you. Okay. Now, part of being an administrator and understanding, because there's a lot of things that we don't see here, is having conversations with teachers about what they're using. One of the things I use for myself to stop it from being overwhelming is I have teacher groups where we try different resources. We don't all use them at the same. Okay? Because I'm the only teacher that teaches my subject at my school, I do have a Facebook group, and our Facebook group for AP Economics is amazing. Okay, so as an administrator, you have to talk to your teachers and find out what they're using, okay? Because not everything can be seen directly in the classroom. But we need to also know, is what they're doing overwhelming, or is it what we want to see? All right, here are my references. Thank you guys so much for coming to my TED Talk. I look forward to watching yours and hearing your feedback. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Thank you.